Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we'll talk a little bit about the New Orleans Saints, the LSU Tigers, the Tulane Green Wave, and of course, we'll also touch on prep sports. We've got a great panel for you tonight, and also a great guest as well. Joining me on the program, I tell you what, I got to say, I love this guy. He does a great job in anything he's involved in when it comes to sports, and he always tells it like it is. Mike Detillier is with us from WWL 870. Mike, welcome. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for asking me.
Really enjoy having you. Glenn Guilbeau will join us from Gannett News in just a few minutes. And also, Tyrann Mathieu of the Arizona Cardinals will join us on the program tonight. But now let's get started, Mike. First of all, tell us everybody about what you got going on, what you're doing right now. I know you're extremely busy.
Yeah, 13 different college football shows every week. Pre-game, so it keeps me hopping pretty good, but certainly it helps me set up everything from draft coverage, which now is extended now until May.
Yes.
So it's basically 52 weeks out of the year, 365. We live in the South. They love football and they want to talk it all the time, so it keeps me radio, TV jumping a lot, but really the 13 pre-game shows is what really juggles the ball. A couple of professionals with the Saints and the Titans. So I enjoy doing it. And listen, they paying me to watch football.
Amen.
Eric, where else can I find a job like that?
That's right.
So listen, I'll take it. It's been great for me. I enjoy doing it, and it's been my pleasure.
Well, Mike, I'll tell you what, when it comes to the Bible of draft books that are out there right now on the market, and you've made your mark, Mike Detillier's draft report is a must-get for anybody that enjoys the sport of football, wants to know a little about the history of a player from high school. I'm surprised you don't even talk about it when they're in Pee Wee League. You know much about them.
Listen, I do a little bit of that too, but I try to catch them from high school all the way on.
You do.
And also doing a lot of prep stuff and watching it. And one thing, both my girls are married now, but that deal used to be, when is this recruiting stuff going to stop? Because the phone continuously rings from coaches that are trying to recruit in this area. And again, it just got kind of released this week, but for the 5th time in 7 years, Louisiana per capita puts more players in the National Football League than anybody else in America. Eric, that's unbelievable.
It's
this
amazing.
Little drop of a dime state, but it is because who we are. I think we just love football. And yes, Texas puts out a lot of players, Florida puts out a lot in California, but we don't have the population. And you just think about what Katrina and Rita, Gustav, what they did from the I-10 down, had rearranged everything, and yet still, when you're talking about 404 kids last year signed football scholarships from this state, that is just unbelievable.
That's amazing. Normally we start with Saints, we go to LSU, and we talk a little Tulane, but let's talk prep for a few minutes. And is this the best class that you've ever seen coming out?
Yeah, I would say that's an affirmative on that. You got signature players across the board. If it was Robinson, now Leonard Fournette, Speedy Noel, Gerald Willis, you can kind of go down the line. All big-time players across the country. And amazing thing about it is the fact that you have this seems to be kind of battleground, LSU, Alabama. If they don't go to LSU, they're headed to Alabama. And I wonder over the next couple of weeks, as we're starting to finally get some of that leakage that we've heard for so many years, Mac Brown's in a lot of trouble at Texas. If any school can unleash, so to speak, Nick from Alabama, it's Texas. It's Taj Mahal. They have the money, have the facilities to do it. And
all I got network?
Yeah, on network. And I got to win 2 games a year. Oklahoma State, and I'm playing for the national championship. I don't have to run through the gauntlet, and he can say I won national championships at 3 different schools. Believe me, that's a story that has legs. And either he's going to get his money from Texas or he's going to get it from Alabama.
I agree.
But this prep recruiting class is just phenomenal across the board. And it's why LSU has stayed where it's at. And the other thing about it, Eric, is 10 straight years, LSU has put a defensive lineman in the National Football League draft.
Isn't that amazing?
You would never think this state would produce defensive linemen.
True.
You would say, defensive backs, running backs, receivers. No, it's defensive linemen. And really, to be honest with you, the real skilled people in this world today on football-wise, offensive, defensive linemen, but in particular, people that can rush the quarterback.
Mike Detillier with us here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Mike, let's talk a little bit about the Nick Saban situation because, again, it was reported today that Nick Saban met with a Texas Board of Regents about the possibility of going to Texas at the end of the season. How much do you think that is testing the waters, and how much do you think that is Nick Saban getting a little bit antsy in Alabama right now?
He's the college football version of Bill Parcells. I think he gets itchy after a few years, and I think he'd like to move on. He has said all the right things. Tuscaloosa is my home. I'll stay here forever. It kind of reminds me of Paul Dietzel. Right. I'll never leave LSU, and he's gone.
Right.
And so he's done the exact same thing in Tuscaloosa. It would not shock me one bit that after this season, and he has a run now, 2 national championships, maybe a possibility of a third, that he could take a look at Texas in college football or the NFL. Because I just think he wants another challenge. Sure. I just think, when you have accomplished everything at that level, what more is there to do? You can say, well, Bear Bryant did it and Bowden did it. But that was a different era.
It was. Today,
I think it's all about running ahead of the posse before they catch you. He goes 9-3. People will say, what happened?
Oh, yeah.
What happened? Why am I taking flack for winning 9 or 10 games? I do think that there's a lot of legs to this. And I know one thing. Texas has enough money to lure him. And that school has a lot of reputation that say, hey, listen, I'll trade one red for another red.
He's got a lot of Louisiana flavor on that coaching staff that come into Louisiana. And again, he picks and chooses the players that he'd like to come to Alabama. He doesn't get them all, but he gets quite a few. LSU goes into Texas and gets quite a few players, obviously, for their program as well. If he was to make that move to Texas, is that good for LSU or does that hurt LSU?
I think it's good. I think it'd be a great move because it may affect kids from the northern part of the state more than, say, the southern part. Because if anybody kind of escapes to go to Texas, it's normally those kids, the West Monroes, Evangels, Ruston, that sort of thing. But I don't think it would affect the southern part nearly as much. And boy, listen, he got players in the state of Texas. You just look at that Oregon team. They got 14 kids from the state of Texas. How can Stanford have 19 guys from the state of Texas? How you let an Andrew Luck get out of there? Or Ryan Tannehill escape from you? Or RG3? How do you let those guys go to another school and you're not recruiting them? Johnny Manziel told me this at the Manning camp when I asked him about Texas. He said, well, they didn't recruit me much. But he said, I grew up an LSU fan. I said, why? He said, well, I'm from Tyler, Texas. Matt Flynn's from Tyler, so I grew up being an LSU fan because of Matt. I said, well, did LSU recruit you? He said, well, not too much either. Goes to show you it's an inexact science. He said, I almost went to Stanford or Oregon instead of Texas A&M. Interesting.
No doubt about it. We're going to take a quick pause. Mike Detillier of 870 WWL AM Radio is with us. Also going to be joined by Glenn Guilbeau of Gannett News. And stick around, New Orleans, because we got a treat for you. New Orleans' own Tyrann Mathieu of the Arizona Cardinals will join us after our commercial break. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Remember, you can watch the live broadcast of this program every Thursday, 6 to 7 here on WLAE with a rebroadcast each and every Friday night, 10 to 11. Stick around.
My name's Reggie. Just recently, my wife and I took in her sister's children. Now, we already had 4, so I went from becoming a family man to a man with a bigger family. Now, you can't eat love, so I don't know how I'm gonna feed them tonight. How was that, Rich?
I think I look more like Denzel.
That's cold, man.
Play a role in ending hunger. Visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank.
Packers. Viking. Packers. Viking. Viking.
Red state, blue state, vegan.
Carnivore.
We come from different places.
Uptown.
Downtown.
Optimist.
We come to different conclusions.
Half empty.
Half full.
But when we live united, we create real, lasting change in the building blocks of life. The education, income, and health of our communities, our families,
United.
even the person next to us.
Live united.
Real change won't happen without you. So give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Sign up at liveunited.org.
You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television. Find us on Cox Channel 14, Charter Channel 11 and 711, AT&T Channel 32 and 1032, Dish TV, DirecTV, and over-the-air broadcast on Channel 32.
Know what?
What?
Since I got adopted, I've learned a lot about these humans.
I know. Check out these two. It's Flirt City over here.
Yeah, I noticed that. It looks like my human is definitely into your human.
Oh, look! I think she's getting his number.
Nice.
Your human's got some sweet moves.
Takes after his dog. Oh, look, they're doing that thing where they put their arms around each other.
She kicked up a leg. It's like in the movies.
That's awesome. Looks like we're going to be hanging out a little bit more.
Hi, we're
Welcome back. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We got a great panel for you tonight. Mike Detillier of 870 AM WWL Radio here in New Orleans. And I want to introduce Glenn Guilbeau of Gannett News joining us as well. Glenn, welcome. Thanks for joining the panel tonight. Before we get started and get into some content, if you would, tell the folks a little bit about what you're doing for Gannett News and, of course, your website as well.
I cover LSU and the Saints for the Gannett papers in Louisiana. It's in Shreveport, Lafayette, Alexandria, Monroe, and then there's all kinds of Gannett papers around the country and the Southeast, and do a lot for USA Today, especially concerning LSU football and the Saints. And you can get most of that usatoday.com, lsubeat.com, and LSU Beat Tweet.
Guys, let's start off with LSU, and we'll get into the Saints in a few minutes. And again, folks, stick around because Tyrann Mathieu of the Arizona Cardinals will be joining us very soon on the program as well. Guys, I'll start with you, Mike. Mike, how good is this LSU team?
They're a really good offensive team. I don't think they've been tested on defense. My big question marks for LSU defensively is what's going to happen when a team's going to come out and try to pound the football at you and off the edges where I think you're a little smaller. And that secondary, I think the book has been written. Go after one side. They're stealing stuff from the Pac-10 and the Big West. In essence, go after one side of the field. Ole Miss did it with Dante Moncrief. You look at the bowl game, what Taj Boyd did with DeAndre Hopkins, exact same way. And LSU's doing it with Jarvis Landry. And then when you start trying to move coverage, then they throw the football to Odell Beckham. It's part of the game today. It's interesting how when you lose 9 players that are playing in the NFL, that's difficult. But the story is Zach Mettenberger. 3 games into this season, he has been the story because he has turned into college football's version of Joe Flacco, coached by the same guy,
yes.
Cam Cameron. You 3 games into the season, and I know Glenn probably agree, you'd have never thought 9 touchdowns, 0 pass interceptions.
No doubt. Glenn, your assessment of this team so far?
I thought Mettenberger would be better under Cameron, but I didn't think he'd put up the numbers. He has his passing efficiency is 205 right now. He's number 3 in the nation, number 1 in the SEC. It's 70 points better than he was last year. And 9 touchdowns in 3 games, that's a school record. And 5 touchdowns in 1 game, and he only threw it 19 times in that game. So he's really good. He's getting rid of the ball quicker. His feet are better, and that's all Cam Cameron. And I think that's the thing. The offense is going to be better, so the defense doesn't have to be nearly as good as it was in 2011. If they can just be solid, I sound like I'm talking about the Saints now, but if they can just be solid, and I think they will be, because last year the defense was bad as it ended the season. I think they'll actually be better than that.
I thought they underachieved last year on defense. The other thing, too, is phantom pressure. And I think with Leal Collins being moved to the left side at tackle, I think you don't see him nearly as flustered. He's much more poised, more confident. Doesn't feel that almost phantom pressure that he felt a year ago coming from that left side. And they've turned into, instead of a right-handed running team, to a left-handed running team because of Collins and Vidal Alexander.
We're going to get back to LSU in just a few minutes, but it is our pleasure to bring on Inside New Orleans Sports New Orleans' own Tyrann Mathieu, formerly of the LSU Tigers, now a member of the Arizona Cardinals. Tyrann, welcome. Thanks so much for being with us this evening.
Hey, how are you guys doing, man? Thank you guys for having me.
We're doing great. Eric Asher with you, along with Mike Detillier and Glenn Guilbeau. And I guess the first question out the box is for you, Tyrann. The biggest adjustment for you when you talk about the pro game, let's talk about on the field first. What's been the biggest adjustment for you on the field?
Well, for me, I know a lot of guys come from college and they go to the NFL and, they try to get adjusted to the speed of the game. I played in the SEC, which, the game was much faster, than any other college team, So, but for me, it was communication, getting the feel for my teammates, just learning how they play the game of football. Just communicating with those guys, just being on the same page. Because, like everybody knows, man, the NFL is a pass-happy league now. It's a vertical passing game. And, if you don't communicate with your teammates, you definitely get beat. And put up have someone put up 40 points on you each game. So for me, it was all about communication.
Tyrann, I've been doing this 27 years. The only guy that I've seen more instinctive on the defensive side of the football coming out of this state was Ed Reed. And you number 2 on that list. But one of the things I think that sometimes defensive backs maybe aren't used to is week to week, you're facing a really good receiver. That's not necessarily the case at the college level, even in the SEC. That adjustment to every day in practice, you go up against Larry Fitzgerald and Michael Floyd. So that's really helped you in your adjustment also, hasn't it?
Oh, definitely, man. I've probably faced, 1 to 2, big time receivers, my entire college career. But every game it's a new one, and with preparation is key, man. You have to take everything. You have to take everything into consideration, man. You have to go out there, with your tools, your notes, and just put it all in the line, man. Because every week, man, it's a big time receiver. They may not necessarily be a Calvin Johnson, or a Roddy White, but they are 11-year veterans, who know the game, who's been through a lot. So, you definitely have to prepare yourself in practice. I've been fortunate, because, I go up against Larry Fitzgerald every day, which he's definitely helped me out a lot, with my game and, also just breaking down, the top wide receivers game.
Tyrann, I always thought they should have put you on offense a little bit when you were at LSU. And now I see they're putting your buddy Patrick on offense a little bit there with Arizona. How much has Patrick helped you come into the league and just get adjusted and so forth? And what would you think of maybe down the road playing a little bit of offense?
Well, I think first off, man, Patrick has been, extremely, instrumental, in my development, into becoming a, professional athlete. And, my hat goes off to him. Like I always say, man, I'm forever grateful for him. With him being a best friend, but with him also being a teammate, and a mentor, I'm definitely fortunate, and I'm blessed. But as far as offense goes, man, I don't think I'm good at offense. I used to be, man, at punk ball.
Man, I don't know. I saw him return punts. Hey, Tyrann, I saw you return punts, and I know you can do it.
Yeah, man. I know I can catch the ball, man, get up field, but
maybe it's a mindset.
I'm just a regular defensive guy, who looks good with the ball in his hand.
Tyrann, a lot of draft gurus said that you were a tweener, that you weren't going to be fast enough to be able to take on the guys on the outside, that you may be a slot guy, you may be a safety guy. What do you say to those critics? After just a couple weeks in the NFL, you've made your mark. Where do you feel comfortable in that defensive backfield?
Well, obviously the critics, they were dead wrong, obviously. But, hey, man, I always knew I can do it. Even back in college, man, I didn't have to cover the number 1 wide receiver. I was fortunate enough to have Patrick and Morris, but, when those opportunities presented themselves in college, I definitely rose up. The only thing I gave up, maybe 1 touchdown my entire college career. And so I take pride in being a great defensive back. I take pride in covering my man. I just definitely go out there, with a certain attitude and a certain mindset that, I'm going to make a play this game, and I'm going to impact this game.
One of the things, Tyrann, I know, and I've talked to smaller running backs, receivers, and what fuels them, I think, is what fuels you. Since you were younger, people say, you know what, Tyrann, you're too small to play. You can't play major college football. You can't play in the NFL. But that fuels your fire. And I think that drives your competitiveness. And am I right or wrong about that that's what drives you to be the best you can, because you kind of hear that voice sometimes saying you can't do it, and you out there to show them you can.
Definitely. Like I said, man, I'm extremely blessed, man, by God. I'm blessed with a certain and a tremendous skill set, but it's tough, man, because there's a lot of people who doubt you. There's a lot of people tell you can't do it. Most of those people are the ones closest to you. But for me, man, it was all about, getting getting to the next level. Whether it had been high school to college or college to NFL. I just try to prepare myself enough so that way the transition that I went through it wouldn't be difficult for me. And I think I prepared myself pretty good over the years. But I mean, the doubters out there, they're always going to be doubters, man. Even when you're a Peyton Manning or Ed Reed, somebody out there is always going to doubt you. But you just have to keep your head on straight, man. Stay neutral, and just keep elevating your game.
Tyrann, what's it going to be like coming back to the city? I guess y'all get here Friday maybe or Saturday, and then maybe being around town a little bit, and then going into that Superdome Sunday morning. What's that going to be like?
Oh man, it's going to be exciting for me. I know I'm going to be anxious and nervous, just to get out there and play football. In front of my hometown, man, in front of my home state. In front of old teachers and my football coaches, family and friends. It's definitely going to be one of those achievements, in my life that, growing up as a kid, I always wanted to accomplish, and finally I'm in a position to do that. So, I just want to prepare myself well enough so, that I go out there and have a good game. Because, I mean, as everybody knows, Drew Brees, he can definitely pick a defense apart. So, I definitely want to go out there on my A game so I can help my team, win the game.
Tyrann, what have you seen in film study this week, taking on your hometown team, the New Orleans Saints? Obviously, the Saints 2-0, playing pretty decent. Your thoughts on again facing that prolific Saints offense?
The Saints offense, man, they're different from a lot of offense, in the NFL. What I mean by that is, they don't do much, but the things that they do it so good. They may run the same play, but it's a different formation. But they're going to stick to, what works for them. The play action passes, the double moves on the outside, working Jimmy Graham and, Marcus coasting up the seams. They're going to stick to what they do. And they do it pretty well. So, I mean, like I said, you just have to prepare yourself well enough, just to go out there and just give yourself a chance to, to defend passes and, make plays. Because, I mean, Drew Brees is probably one of the more accurate passes, I've faced thus far.
One of the things, Tyrann, I think you're going to find out real quick. This state's behind you 100%. As individual player, but the Who Dat Nation, they're going to be pulling for the Saints. They hope you do well, just not well enough to have the Cardinals win the game.
Well, I understand that. And it's all good, man. No hard feelings.
Tyrann, let me ask you, how have you stayed away from the issues that arose when you were at LSU that got you into trouble? How have you stayed away from that?
Well, I think for me, man, I was so caught up into what I was used to doing, and what I didn't realize is the type of role model I am, the type of responsibilities that others have placed on me that I have placed on myself by being a pretty good football player, and for me, man, this is all about staying out of sight and out of mind. I think I had to change my environment in order to focus on what was the problem. I don't think that I would have been successful, if I stayed in the same environment, around the same, negativity. I just had to get around something positive, so I can get my head back on straight. And obviously, you want to gain strength, in spirit, with God. You want to gain strength, with self-discipline. And I think I've been able to do that, over the past year. Knock on wood, I've been successful. With just sticking to my routine, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the future. Obviously, you don't forget the things that happened, in your past, that sidetracked you, but it's always good to go back, and take little bitty things, because it all wasn't bad. It all wasn't bad. It was some positives.
On the field, it was unbelievable.
Just want to go back and take the positives with you.
Tyrann, final question for you. We'd be remiss if we didn't ask you about your LSU Tigers. What you think about the Tigers this season, and what your expectations are for your old school?
Well, first off, I think the expectations are the same. We want to go out there and win a national championship. Secondly, I think Odell Beckham is, quickly making everybody forget about the Honey Badger. You know, so he's having a great year, man. Turning punts and being a key target on offense. You know, obviously I'm all about defense, and Eagle Ferguson and Anthony Johnson, Jalen Mills, all those guys, man. They definitely have a chance to follow in the footsteps, of all the great defensive players that came through LSU. So I'm rooting for them.
Tyrann, thank you so much for joining us tonight on Inside New Orleans Sports. We certainly appreciate it, and we wish you the best of luck with the Arizona Cardinals, maybe except for this weekend in the Dome.
Just play well. Just don't win the game.
The Desert Badger.
The Desert Badger. Hey, that's pretty good.
No doubt.
Well, thank you guys, man. I appreciate you guys having me.
Thanks again. That's Tyrann Mathieu, former St. Augustine High, former LSU Tiger, and now a member of the Arizona Cardinals. Wow, guys come a long way. There's no doubt about that. When you look at obviously his time at LSU, and there were a lot of doubters out there on whether he was going to be the playmaker that he was in college, in the pros, and guys, you've already seen it.
I think it's the best fit for him, though, Glenn. I think going there where you're having some mentorship by a Patrick Peterson that can kind of take you under your wing, that's a good defensive team to begin with. But to have that guy with you to kind of just shape and keep you away from bad elements, I think it was the perfect fit for Tyrann. He might have went somewhere else and didn't have that. I remember Ladarius Webb telling me going to Baltimore, he got in trouble at Southern Miss. That's why he ended up at Nichols. He goes to Baltimore and he says, I'll never forget walking that locker room the first time. Ed Reed, Ray Lewis. And, he said it was a reality check. Those guys didn't talk to him about football, talk to him about life. Stay away from the people that are going to get you in trouble, that got you in trouble at Southern Miss. And I think the same sort of thing has happened to Mathieu.
Well, yeah, the difference between NFL and college is some of your teammates in the NFL are adults,
Sure.
In fact, most of them you would hope are adults, and maybe the age of your coach back in college maybe, or some of your assistant coaches. And Tyrann, I said that when he first got in trouble at LSU, he needed to leave the state. Right. And, he goes to Arizona. That's a completely different environment. And he's got Patrick Peterson there, who never really got in any trouble at LSU, to be his role model, both as a person and as a player. I mean, they're the same type of player in a way.
And he was kind of a mentor at LSU, Patrick Peterson.
Sure, he was.
Which, again, was a great transition for Tyrann when he got to Arizona. So, look, I agree with you guys. Perfect fit for him. And again, they're utilizing him in the right way as well.
He's a bit of a hybrid player.
There's no doubt.
You're moving him around almost like the queen piece in chess defensively to try to get him to rush the quarterback. Then you drop him back in coverage. Let him do what he feels more comfortable with. But literally, I think, he's a guy right now. I know it's early, but, is there a better defensive player as a rookie?
He's already leading their team in tackles or close to it. He's got a forced fumble. I think he's going to be the best of the recent LSU DBs to go in the NFL, except for Peterson and Claiborne maybe. But I think he'll have a better career than the others.
The one thing he has not lost, guys, is he's a playmaker. I mean, that's translated from St. Augustine to LSU and now in the pros.
It's all about instincts. You can't teach that, Eric. I think people say this all the time. He's got great size, great speed. You know what? We've all seen guys that look the part. They look great coming off the team bus. Can't play worth a lick. My thing about it is you can't teach instincts. He has it at the highest level. And he backs it up. Yeah, they said, well, he's cocky. Well, you know what? It ain't bragging if you can do
Patrick's cocky too, man.
Yeah, and all of them.
What's funny too, Tyrann, he sounded like he didn't understand, playing on offense. That's because he'd probably be trying to steal the ball from his teammates. That's what he does.
He understands how to play offense. You don't run back punts like he does and not know how to deal with it.
But he doesn't see himself as an offensive player. It's kind of like how some hitters hate pitchers and pitchers hate hitters. He sees the offense as the enemy, I think.
First time he goes in the slot and catches a pass,
I think it'd be great.
He'll say, Bruce, put me in on offense.
No doubt about that. Guys, let's continue to talk a little bit about LSU for a few more minutes before we go to the pros, and we'll talk about Tulane as well. And I'll start with you, Glenn. Cam Cameron, what has he meant to this team? What has he meant to the quarterback? What has he meant to the offense?
Well, I think less of all the coordinators he's had on offense, and he's had some good ones, and they've had some success here and there. I think he trusts Cameron more than the others, And, somebody told me recently, a former player, that in the past LSU was trying to run 3 different offenses. They had the option, and they had this, and it just looks like they're more cohesive. They have a better pace. They're more organized. The plays are getting in quicker. Everything just looks sharper. And like I said earlier about Mettenberger, he just getting rid of the ball quicker. His footwork's better. He's throwing more accurately. I think that's all Cameron.
You know what? Joe Flacco told me that Super Bowl week that Cam Cameron's the type of guy that knows how to put the right grit of sandpaper on the sander to get the rough parts out of your game. And he trusts what you tell him you're more comfortable with. And it's funny, Drew Brees said almost the exact same thing yesterday in an interview.
He sure did.
That he gets what you do best and then incorporates in his system. I think there have been good coaches. I agree with Glenn. Other part about that is I think some of those guys felt as though my system is my system and we're going to run it. I think Cam adjusts well to the talent at hand. I do think that what he has learned from Zach is I like to throw the football deeper downfield. I trust what I see in Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham. And if you look at the completions, he's completed 45 passes. 32 of them have been to Jarvis Landry or Odell Beckham. That tells me he's relayed that to Cam. That's what I want to do. I think Flacco had the right comment on that. He knows the right grit of sandpaper to put on the sander to get the rough spots out of your game.
Well, he doesn't seem to be throwing to receivers. He seems to be throwing receivers open. It's a big difference than what we saw with him last season. The question is, and the big question for me is, we get into SEC play now. Will we see the same Zach Mettenberger when we see an SEC pass rush? Again, not a guy that's very mobile, not a guy that's going to beat anybody in the run. His footwork has improved remarkably just in one season. Mike, your thoughts? I mean, SEC pass rush, big difference in the first 3 games that they played.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I think he'll be helped by a better offensive line this year than a year ago. I think Glenn could say. I mean, when you lose your starting left tackle, your right tackle leaves midway into the season, you lose Josh Williford. That was a lot of shuffling there, and I just go back to that almost phantom pressure that he felt. He feels more comfortable in the pocket today, and also, too, you got your stud running back in Jeremy Hill back. I think a better offensive line. I think he feels more comfortable, but I do think that you will see a little bit more of him going to the backs, tight ends, because in theory, you can double cover 2 receivers. And I think you're going to see that by some defenses try to take Landry and Beckham out, force you to throw the football to the tight end or to the backs. That'll be the big test.
Yeah, last year, even when LSU was playing bad teams early on, he was getting sacked big time. And the offensive line was struggling. He's barely been touched so far this season, even though I know the competition hasn't been that good. But, you know, Hawkins at right tackle has been very good. They lost Josh Williford again, and it hasn't really affected him because they had so many people move up when he got hurt last year. So they got a very good line, and they got a little depth on the offensive line too. So I think he's going to be fine in the SEC play. I mean, last year he had his best game against Alabama.
And
against
that's saying something.
That is.
I will say this. While he gets the MVP early on, man, I can't say enough about La'el Collins at left tackle. Switching from guard to tackle, that isn't as easy as you might think.
Agreed.
That guy is physically, he's the most gifted offensive lineman at LSU since Andrew Whitworth. And you can tell that, again, I think it filters down to Zach. I don't feel that pressure. I feel comfortable in the pocket. La'el Collins doesn't get a lot of ink, but that guy has played terrific this season.
Glenn, any concerns with the defense?
Not really. I mean, I think they've been trying a lot of things, a lot of different players in the first few games because of the competition. But I like the speed at defensive end. I think the defensive tackles are solid. The linebackers are very good. They kind of got to decide who they're going to play.
Yeah.
But they got a lot of good options there. Might be some questions in the secondary, but you got Lawston back this week. I like Jalen Mills. Ronald Martin is solid.
If Craig Lawston is healthy, he's a premier player.
Yeah. They might not have a great DB like they've had in the past, but they got a solid secondary.
They got a solid group.
Yeah.
One of the things they do have, though, I think is the best freshman cornerback tandem in college football today. In Tre'Davious White, Rashard Robinson. Just think this guy didn't get cleared by the clearinghouse until, a couple days before the start of the season, and he steps right in. It's remarkable. 15 true freshmen playing on that football team. You're talking about at the highest levels of college football that you can incorporate that. The one question mark I do have about LSU is how they will handle a team coming out and say, we're going to pound the football at you and you stop it. And they're going to attack those 2 defensive ends.
Guys, I'd be remiss if I did not ask you about the Oklahoma State situation, the 5-part series in Sports Illustrated that obviously had Les Miles kind of wrapped up in it. Mike, your thoughts on that?
I think Des Bryant said it best. Man, if they wasn't paying me, something's wrong. He was the best football player of that Oklahoma State team. I think you could go to a lot of different colleges and hear incidents like that. You can't control boosters. You can't control a lot of different things that go on behind the scenes. Listen, guys, let's not be naive. Things do happen behind the scene. Players do get paid. There are things that happen there. It has become professional sports. And these type of events sporadically will happen. And let's not be honest with you, USC got put on probation. Had Reggie Bush paid off the guy that he got the money from, you'd have never heard about it.
You'd have never known about it.
And what is happening to the NCAA on Miami or Florida? How long has it been, Glenn? A couple of years, and they've done them absolutely nothing. And they had a booster actually say, yeah, I'm the guy who did
That's
it.
right.
The NCAA is not as feared as it used to be.
No,
which
not
could
at all.
lead
Nor
to
are they as
wild
consistent as they were.
It's the Wild Wild West now.
Yeah, and that
Wild
could
West.
happen because, the NCAA, they don't get a lot of respect. They don't deserve it the way they didn't punish Johnny Manziel, so they got a shady reputation right now. The thing I found interesting right off about that SI series was they said T. Boone Pickens, who has all the money in the world with that school, they said, he's not involved in this story. Oh,
yeah,
really?
Right. Yeah, right.
How can that be? Who could sue the magazine more than anyone else?
Right, who could put that magazine out of business
Exactly.
tomorrow if he wanted to? Eric, I just think it has become now professional sports college-wise, if it's basketball, football, where big money is concerned, I think you're going to see more and more of this. And I do agree. I think it has become the Wild Wild West. And when Johnny Manziel, who's the cover boy for all this, you knew they weren't going to punish him. They had all the goods on him that he signed that for cash. Come on. Let's not be reminiscent about the fact that this is basically being covered up, and they put him on a plane to go ask boosters for money 5 or 6 times. That's not prostituting the kid.
Come on. You know it is.
Bottom
There's
line.
no doubt about it. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We have a fantastic panel for you this afternoon. It is Mike Detillier of 870 WWL Radio, and also Glenn Guilbeau of Gannett News. We're going to take a quick pause. When we come back, we'll shift gears. We'll talk a little Tulane, and then we're going to talk a lot of Saints football in our second half hour. Also, you can always join us at 504-866-3200. Your calls are always welcome here on Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hi, we're Ola High, and you're watching WLAE TV.
In the search for beautiful people, music that moves, and real culture, America, there's only one LA Coast. Go Coast, Louisiana delivers the treasures of the Gulf, fresh to you.
I think we need a bigger boat.
Sundays at 8:30 p.m. on LAE.
And welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Eric Asher with you, along with Mike Detillier and Glenn Guilbeau. Guys, before we talk Saints, let's touch on Tulane for a few minutes. First of all, Tulane 2-1. The defense playing very, very well last week against Louisiana Tech. Mike, your thoughts?
As part of the roller coaster Curtis Johnson's going to go through, that was a great game defensively. Listen, that game could have got out of hand real quickly. Tech just didn't make any plays, and Tulane's defense was phenomenal in that football game. You look with the two sophomores in the secondary, with Doss and Darian Monroe, they did a great job. And Wilmsley had a tremendous day rushing the quarterback, but it was the turnovers, setting up a short field, and I think you see some of that. Just the maturing of Nick Montana at quarterback, and Ryan Grant's a guy that can play at the next level. He's a top 100 pick next year, but just not having a really strong offensive line, defensive line, week in, week out, I think you're going to see to ride the roller coaster where 1 week you'll play real well against a Tech, but what happened the week before against South Alabama? And then what happens this week against Syracuse?
Yes.
I think until you can get the real skill players, offensive linemen, defensive linemen, I think CJ will continue to roll that.
South Alabama was not as embarrassing a loss as I think a lot of people thought. They did beat Western Kentucky, which gave Kentucky a good game. You're comparing scores. South Alabama's not been bad, really. But Tulane, all they need, that 2-1 start, I think that's what they really needed. They might be able to have a decent season.
Guys, is this a bowl team, do you think?
I think it's a borderline type of bowl.
I'm thinking more 5 and 6
I would think a 6-win And for Curtis, that would be a great accomplishment. The one thing he's made some inroads in, and listen, we living in the golden age of football. When you look at the success of LSU, you saw Louisiana Tech have a great team a year ago. What Mark Hudspeth's done at UL Lafayette,
yes.
You know, that's tough to say I'm the number 2 school in the state when you got TCU and Mississippi State and Ole Miss and everybody else. They like cockroaches at night running around trying to grab the number 2 players in the state.
Sure.
And now you got Arizona State and Arizona, everybody coming in here. I think he's made some inroads recruiting, but again, it's the big guys that are going to either cut bait or not with him. And I think CJ's done a real nice job bringing in Montana and giving him the kind of keys to the car. And I was a little concerned about that. I think he's done a phenomenal job early on this season without a lot of protection.
Glenn?
I mean, you know, what's wrong with the third tier of players in Louisiana? If you're all over the NFL, I mean, with the top tier, I mean, I think you can make a living getting those second and third tier players
if you
in
can
the
get
state.
those big linemen.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's the key.
Yeah.
They don't have a ton of those in this state. We're just not built to have that. You can find the linebackers and defensive backs and receivers and running backs, but it's really those offensive and defensive linemen.
Sure.
Man, those guys, look, for Grenier to leave this state to go to Vanderbilt.
Right.
You know, and he was a guy that was considered one of the top 20 players in the state from my neck of the woods, and, you know, and he takes off to go to Vanderbilt. And you weren't kind of real strong there. So that tells me that even the second and third tier guys are maybe looking around until you can get the reputation. You got to win first. Winning solves all of Curtis's problems.
No doubt.
So he's got to get that first before he can convince the 2s and 3s this is your best option.
504-866-3200 if you'd like to join the conversation. Mike Detillier of WWL Radio, Glenn Guilbeau of Gannett News, and of course I'm Eric Asher. Let's talk Saints. Guys, I've got a curious question. I was thinking about this, been thinking about this for the last few days. Biggest surprise for you guys, the struggles of the offense or the success of the defense?
Well, it's the success of the defense. I don't think anybody, and even I thought it would be better, but nothing like this. You look at this football team, they were giving up 28 points a game a year ago. 28 points a game. They've given up 31 in 2 games, and 7 of that came off of an interception.
Yes.
The struggles in the red zone, I think, are more of a concern. They're moving the football 20-20, just not scoring touchdowns. So I think the success of the defense, just how good, and to be able to force you to kick field goals and turnovers, I think have been tremendous. I knew early on, though, and watching the OTAs and training camp, Cam Jordan, Akeem Hicks,
yes.
That defensive line was going to be the strength of this football team. Everybody was, Junior Galette or the secondary. No, the strength was the defensive line. Now, they're getting knocked around pretty good injury-wise there. Cam Jordan's an all-pro football player, and I'm not real sure in time the best defensive lineman they got is not going to be Akeem Hicks.
What a player. Boy, he'd have been something at LSU.
Boy, sure.
Oh, my goodness.
There. Gosh. But I agree with Mike. I'm surprised the defense is doing that well. You know, the offense just, you know, something that'll work itself out, I'm sure. They're just not quite there yet on offense. But I have no worries at all about Drew Brees and the offense coming around. But the defense surprised me. You know, they're not giving up those huge plays right up the middle like they did last year. And they're just, you know, they're probably not going to be a great defense, but they're playing good enough to win.
You know, last year the Ravens won the Super Bowl. You know what they finished in defense? 22nd. It's all about pressure.
Yes,
it's all about turnovers.
Right.
And when the Saints won the Super Bowl in 2009, was that a top 10 defense? No. But again,
turnovers.
Darren Sharper changed the field across the board. They were able to get turnovers on the plus side. They got pressure, and they were playing in the left-hand lane of traffic. They were scoring 35, 40 points a game. So for you to keep up with them, you had to throw the football, and Greg Williams knew how to get after the quarterback.
Let's head to the phone lines. Again, 504-866-3200. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Got a great panel for you tonight. Mike Detillier of WWL Radio, Glenn Guilbeau of Gannett News. I'm Eric Asher. Let's head to New Orleans and Scott. Scott, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
What's up, Mike, Glenn, and most of all, my boy, Eric.
Good evening.
How you doing,
all right.
pal? Great show, man.
Thank you, Scott.
Sir.
What are we going to do about the Saints defensive line with all the injuries? What's going to happen? Is this defense going to be able to keep up?
I think if you can get your defensive linemen healthy, and I think you'll probably see in the next week or two, you'll get a lot of those guys back.
You get Foster back.
You get Foster back.
Walker, you'll get
Tyrann Walker back. And Jay Richardson can play some defensive end for you in a pinch. And you saw Junior Gillette playing a lot of that defensive end in last week's game against Tampa. Listen, it was a godsend. Got to be honest with you on this, that they were able to get the rain delay. Everybody was, it broke momentum. No. That temperature on the field was over 100 degrees. It went to 80. You had the big rain delay. It was a godsend for that to happen.
And the Saints had the ball once, so they had the pictures to look at.
Yes.
Drew Brees just said that on the radio coming in, and because they were concerned with where certain players were going to be, so they studied that during that whole break. So that helped
that's a great point. And, as I went back and looked at the tape again, and maybe this is a byproduct of them playing Atlanta, playing Tampa Bay on a year-in, year-out basis twice.
You know those players.
But you do. They know the scheme. You could see on Drew Brees' first interception, he got kind of fooled a little bit. Linebacker kind of dropped back into where they thought the ball was going to be.
Too.
He was. The second interception for sure, he definitely got pressure.
Up the middle pressure.
But you wonder, again, how much they've had to tweak the scheme, and especially when you get into the division, those guys kind of know what you're doing. They know the rhythm of the offense and how that will affect them.
Underrated to how good Tampa Bay's defense is.
I do agree with you.
Man, you just think about it. And Mike Bennett, their best pass rusher, he's out in Seattle. But you look at what Tampa Bay brings to the table on defense, special teams, they're very good. But, and I use the big but here, in that situation, Greg Schiano and Josh Freeman aren't on the same page. A talented quarterback, I think a really good college coach, and it's clashed. He's won at the college level because of running the football, play great defense. He's got to have a better relationship with his quarterback. 23 penalties the first 2 weeks against Tampa. That's an undisciplined football
It's self-destruction.
Team. Exactly.
And that's one of the reasons why, honestly, the Saints came out of there with a win. Tampa obviously.
They gave them every opportunity.
Every time you
They left them a little window there at the end when the Saint defense
do it with
stopped
Drew.
them.
Yeah.
You can't do it with him.
Let's head back to the phone lines. Brother joins us in Metairie. Brother, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports.
How you guys doing, Eric? This is one heck of a show, buddy.
Thank you, brother.
I got one question for Mike, okay? Mike, since Ingram didn't practice the last couple of days, is there any chance you think Kerry Robinson might get some playing time this Sunday? I want to hang up and listen, and this is a great show. You all have a great day.
Thank you, brother. Listen, their best running back is Pierre Thomas. Bottom line.
Agreed.
I mean, they've given Mark every opportunity, and that 4th and half yard, as a running back, you got to make that play. You got to
your own
fall
blocker.
forward. Yeah, exactly. This is a game of specialty. And you know what? Their best short yardage runner, power runner, is Kyrie Robinson. It would not shock me that, rubber meets the road here. One thing you got to give Sean Payton, he has given Mark every opportunity, and he's always played the best guy.
Always.
Always.
It's taken him a while, though, sometimes.
This time,
he's got to admit he's wrong.
But on this, I think you got to go another direction. And yet, you know what? Maybe Mark doesn't fit here well. But Kyrie, and I look at him, he's looking like every time he carries the football, his deal is my career is on the line. You don't see that with Mark, and he doesn't break tackles.
Well, and look, guys, I mean, watching Mark Ingram for the last couple of years as we have, not fast enough to get to the edge.
And he's not powerful enough to break a tackle.
And he's not. And then also, again, he's not a one-cut runner. You could see as the offense develops, he just doesn't trust where the cutback lanes are going to be and doesn't hit them. And that really has affected him as far as his production with the Saints.
And also, too, is offensive line is not nearly as good. That 09 and that 11 unit, Carl Nix was the baddest dude walking the planet. He's the best guard in the business. Ben Grubbs made the Pro Bowl. Carl Nix is a Pro Bowl performer every year. And listen, I think a lot of Brian De La Puente. I think he's a guy that could start for some teams. But come on, Jonathan Goodwin is a better player than with De La Puente.
And a bigger player.
And Jermon Bushrod is a far better player than Charles Brown.
You have to be careful sometimes, I think, of running backs coming from a great program like in Alabama, because he was so well protected when he was at Alabama that it hid his deficiencies that you just spelled out, because they had such a good offensive line. I mean, he looked good every game when he was at Alabama, but as a scout, you got to look beyond that, and they didn't do it.
The crazy part about it is 71% of his yardage at Alabama was after first contact. We haven't seen that.
But he's not doing it in the pros.
He's not doing it in the pros.
They're bigger.
I mean, it's a more physical game.
Yeah.
Same thing with Reggie Bush in a way.
Yeah. Well, you know,
Reggie was running away from people.
Right. But then Reggie also had to learn to be patient, to hit that cut
He
back.
had it easy in college. Right. I think Ingram did too.
There's no doubt. You look at him now. He's a different player.
A different player. I think you bring up a good point. He's a totally different player. And I think if Mark goes somewhere else, he may be a totally different player.
In a scheme that fits
him well.
No doubt. Let's talk scheme for a second. Offensive line. We'll go back to the phone lines in just a moment. Hang in there, guys. We have a change with the offensive line coach. We're hearing there's more of a zone blocking scheme. Guys, is the Saints' struggles along the offensive line? Is it the lack of having the change of the scheme, the lack of having the coach that obviously got them to where they were when you look at how prolific this offensive line was, or is it a byproduct of maybe guys like Jerry Evans, who's hurt right now, back, hamstring, didn't practice today? What do you think, Mike?
Personnel, bottom line.
Personnel.
Doesn't
matter about Ingles being the coach.
Listen, I'm going to say this about Aaron Cromer. He was underrated for what he did as an offensive line coach.
Look what he's doing in Chicago.
He's taken a guy that I know pretty well, Jordan Mills, a rookie from Assumption High School, starting for them at that right tackle position. And he's an amazing offensive line coach. Now, he didn't fit the interim coach, and I don't know about being a head coach one day.
It's a tough spot.
But I think he's a terrific offensive line coach. And with Brett, this is his first kind of merry-go-round doing this. I do think it's kind of a byproduct of commute of the NFL. Constant change along the offensive line. Only one guy's back from that 09 unit. That's Jari, and he's hurt right now.
Yeah, and I think the Saints just let too many of those good linemen get away. You know, you pay the money then, because if you don't, you're going to end up paying it later. And I think they will if they have to replace some of these guys, because most of the guys that have been the replacements, they aren't as good. And I think that's why they're switching to more of a finesse game.
You can't pay everybody.
No,
you're going to have to pay Jimmy Graham a lot of money.
I'm saying here and there they should have kept.
They
should have kept Carl Nix.
I think Nix
they should have kept
Carl
Carl
Nix. Though, guys, because again, so many high-round draft choices on the defensive side of the ball. You had guys that were rewarded after the 2009 Super Bowl season on the defensive side of the ball. Guys that were declining players, and then all of a sudden you got to pay Drew Brees the highest contract in the history of the NFL. You had to make a decision. The problem was you weakened yourself on the offensive line, which again protects that $100 million player.
But my thing about it is, if you are an upper echelon quarterback, you're going to get your money. I mean, Matt Ryan's got his.
Sure.
Joe Flacco is getting his. You can't say, and a lot of people say, well, have Drew take a pay cut. Well, why should he take a pay cut? This football team is 3 steps ahead when Drew's at his best, and he's still got 3 or 4 years where he can play at a high level. But again, it is part of you never have every piece of the puzzle right because of free agency. And listen, this league is watered down. It is a watered down league, and you're going to have deficiencies somewhere. And for the Saints right now, it's along the offensive line.
The second most important part of a team like the Saints is the offensive line, just to where they are. And I think that's more important than any other area of a football team. You got to keep some of those guys together, and I think they messed up there.
I think Nix was the big loss, though. I think we both agree
It's
there.
proven that out, even though he's been injured for Tampa. It has proven out Grubbs is not Carl Nix.
No, he's nothing. He's not close.
No.
And listen, I know one thing, talking to Carl, had that offer that came in late come in earlier, I think he's a Saint today.
Tell you what, I bet you the hindsight being 2020, they'd have loved to have had that.
I think so.
Head back to the phone lines. Chris is in Detillier. Chris, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris.
I want to know why y'all got to let PT, y'all got to let him loose. It's time for to let PT loose. That man ready to go. He might gain 1,200 yards if you stay up in there more than 2 plays. Come on now, continuity. Put him in the game and let him stay in the game. That's what I'm talking about. We got the running back.
I agree with that. You're not going to get no disagreement from us,
from
Chris.
none of us.
But he's not as good as he was a couple of years ago.
Well, you know what? The offense is not predictable. You have a guy that can diversify the offense because he can do so many things. Not only is a guy that breaks tackles after contact.
He's the best screen pass.
No,
that's definitely
it is. There's no doubt.
And your best pass protector for Drew. I
Yes.
think he trusts him more than he trusts anybody else. But this is a league of specialty. And you see what Darren Sproles does as an edge runner and the deeper patterns downfield, Pierre, and his ability to run tough in between the tackles. He's not going to be the fastest guy out there. Great screen receiver. What they don't have is the power guy. And maybe they got him.
Right. Well,
maybe they got him. They just haven't played him
in
yet.
Kyrie Robinson.
And Kyrie
but
Robinson.
again, you got to make sure that he can hold on to the football.
They had a power guy and they let him go, Chris Ivory.
Yeah, and I understand
Would you turn that into John Jenkins?
And I understand that because listen, he wasn't going to be here next year, and he missed so much time with injuries.
Right.
That was the thing
and
with
not
Chris.
just that, Mike. You knew unrestricted free agent. You needed to get something for him. Look,
when you could.
Yes, you needed to parlay that, and they needed help along the defensive line. Imagine this defensive line right now if John Jenkins is not there.
And listen, John hasn't played as a rookie. I mean, listen, you look at what he has done so far, the NFL has not been too big for him. And that's saying something from a big guy.
Yeah, no doubt. Glenn, this team is 2-0. Could be 0-2. How good can this team be this season?
Well, we talked during the summer, and I had them in the 7-9, 8-8 range, and I've changed my mind. You know, they're 2-0, and they beat two division teams, and their offense didn't even play in that well. So when the offense comes around, I think they're looking like they could be a playoff team now. I'm changing my prediction to 9-7, 10-6,
I knew he'd
something
come
like
around.
that.
Well, I tell you,
but I mean, I have to admit I'm wrong.
I got people sending me hate mail, having him on the radio show because he's anti-Saints. He's come around.
Yeah, he's come around. Listen, I thought before the season this team would be a 10-6 team. I think they'll finish in that 10-6, 11-5 range. The one thing that jumps out at me though is how good Sean Payton gets his teams to play on the road. They're 31-18, which is over 63% winning percentage, and he's 33-16 at home. Find me another coach other than Belichick that can match that. They're winning those games on the road. That's a focus situation, making sure that your team is right and taking the elements out. That, to me, Eric, is what he brings to the table that no other coach that has ever been in that room has ever been able to do. He's got a great eye for personnel.
Agreed.
But winning on the road, I remember Hank Stram used to tell me all the time, Baya, if you can win 60% of your games in the NFL, you playing in the championship game. He's winning 63% on the road. That is what really jumps out at me.
Less than a minute left, guys. Saints win on Sunday against the Cardinals?
Oh, I think so. I think it'll be a good game, but I think they'll pull it out.
Close. Listen, this Cardinal team is for real. They're a lot better when Darryl Washington's going to be back in a week from now, too. But I think the Saints win in a very, very close game.
As far as going forward, do you see as they kind of go into this season, do you see this offense kind of coming around, getting back to the prolific offense that we once saw?
I want to see better kind of elements in the red zone. I think they're moving the football up and down the field, but it's the red zone offense. And this team was a top 5 red zone offense 4 out of the last 5 years. So it's not that everything has changed. I think there are some kinks there to be made out. It's just the right pieces, especially rushing the ball.
Glenn?
Yeah, they need to do something about a power running back every now and then when they need one. That's going to hurt them if they don't start using them.
Yep.
But I see them, a playoff team.
Well, that's it for tonight, guys. I want to tell you, first of all, thanks so much for being with us. It was absolutely my pleasure to have you guys, and as always, I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate
it. We again, folks, want to remind everybody there's a rebroadcast of this program, Inside New Orleans Sports, each and every Friday night at 10 o'clock here on WLAE TV. Also, you can always catch me on the radio, WGSO 990 AM, 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. weekdays. You can also listen live at ericasher.com. You can also watch this program, if you missed this program, at ericasher.com as well. Want a special thanks to our guests, Mike Detillier and Glenn Guilbeau. But also want to thank the production staff here at WLAE TV, as well as Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, and producer William Hill. Also want to thank Donovan for making sure that we got Tyrann Mathieu today. Donovan Joseph, great job on that as well. Make sure that you tune in next week right here on WLAE TV, 6 o'clock on Thursday with a rebroadcast on Friday at 10. My name is Eric Asher. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.